You keep laughing. Hello. Hi,
Hi.
everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Mai Vu of Mai Vu Coach, and this is another wonderful episode of Bold Brave Woman, episode number 14 with Dana Gilport. How fun to be reconnected with you. The reason why I invited Dana to join me on this conversation is that, Bold Brave Woman is all about ordinary women doing what we think is ordinary life, but in that ordinary doing, there's so much bravery, so
Mm.
much courage, so much boldness that goes into that. So when I found out that Dana, my little Dana, has become a pastor of a church, I had to go, wait a minute, what just happened? I want to know, how did that happen? And what's it like to be a young woman to step into becoming a pastor of a church and leading people's spirituality? It's so bold and brave. So welcome, Dana. Come on in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again, man. It's been too long.
It has been. It has been. So tell me, since we haven't seen each other for about 10 years or so,
Mhm.
and the last time I saw you, you were single, you were looking for yourself, you were looking for your rightful place in the world, and now you're a mom, a wife, and a
Yeah.
pastor. So
What happened?
what
What happened?
happened? How did that happen? That's awesome.
Yeah. I was meditating one day in the meditation community that you know me from,
Uh-huh.
and I just got this voice that, looking back in hindsight, I see it as the voice of God. But at the time, I was trying to meditate, and so this voice that kept interrupting my meditation, I was like, "Get out of here, voice!" But the voice kept telling me to go find a church, which was so weird because I was not a highly religious person. I was kind of raised in the church, but in a minimal, what we call Creaster fashion, Christmas and Easter Christian. Um, and so I ended up. It was such a strong voice that I followed it, and you know, slowly started transitioning out of that mindfulness community, and kind of planted my roots in this community of faith that I found in San Francisco. And then I got pregnant and miscarried in the second trimester, and it was just devastating for me.
Yeah.
And in that recovery process, I really found I found my community, and I found the call. Kept getting that voice that interrupted my meditation that said, "You need to go. You need to go to seminary and create Christian community." Because my experience of finding the church in San Francisco, I was starting to realize, was such a unique experience. People did not feel welcome in church when they were not, uh, you know, the right kind of Christian sort of thing. And so I really felt called to go create new communities of faith that allowed for authentic people showing up authentically as they are, with all of their bad bits and pieces, the quote unquote bad bits and pieces, the shameful bits. Yeah. And so
And
that was the beginning of my call.
yeah, it's oh wow, what a big I don't want to say roundabout because it seemed to imply you didn't go forward, but there's a big loop that connect and then propel you forward, right? Because in the
Mhm.
community that we met each other in, we were way out there. Let's just say it politely that way. Way out there. Sometimes they call it the mystery school, even. That's
Yeah.
how way out there we are.
Mhm.
And religion and Christianity was so not cool in our
Right. Right.
ex
Like
community,
people,
right? I mean, we all were like, I was a Catholic, ran away from Catholicism and the religion of Catholicism and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of that. And for you to go through that and then come back and
Mhm.
now be a representative of Christ and Jesus, the whole language,
Yeah.
I am still catching on. Part of
Yeah.
me going, well, because Dana is doing it, so I can trust it. But if anyone else, I'm going to start packing my bag and ready to run again.
Yeah. And I think that it's both my struggle in being a pastor currently, and my call is because there's in that unchurched community, like the one you and I came from,
Yeah.
people were like, wait a minute, you go to church? Why do you go to church? Like, that
What
doesn't
could
make
they possibly teach you at
right.
those church? Those church.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's my goal, is to like make space for people to come as they are, to question God and the things that they've learned in traditional faith practices, but also to show them what I really have come to understand as following Jesus Christ, and that is caring for our community and showing up and providing space for people to be wholly imperfect as they are, however that shows up.
So what I'm hearing in what you're saying is that there's very little dogma, but there's a lot of doing and serving. I mean, I I did I love what you wrote to me about who you are, what you're up to, and I love the part about being the hands and feet of
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And we don't talk about that anymore. And I mean, that's like way back when, right? Decades and centuries ago that people used to have that ways of. Now it's, I don't know, rules and regulations and things that had me run away. But so tell us more about what you're about or what your church is about.
Sure. I'll start with me because
Okay.
because I'm just a part. I'm just the leader of my church community that I pastor. But I know for me, I'm trying to think of like how to talk about being the hands and feet of Jesus. The thing that has become most apparent to me in my study of our sacred text, the Bible, is that Jesus says over and over again that there are two commandments. The two greatest commandments is to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And then the rest of the Gospels and the epistles, which is what makes up the New Testament, is really Jesus and his disciples showing us how to love God and how to love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at those texts, we really have to evaluate, okay, how is this speaking to me in how I can do those things? Because it's not a go to church and you're, in my opinion, it's not a go to church and you're forgiven because you're being a good Christian just by showing up on Sunday. It's about the day in, day out. How do we treat others? How do we be the hands and feet of Jesus after he's been crucified? Because that's the entire point of his ministry.
Yeah. I'm just like just flashing by so many bad Catholic example of people coming out of church and then swearing at each other or honking and taking up parking spaces, and that those are just minor things, right? And then there's so much more of there's so much, and to be the hand and feet of God is um it's such a noble calling. Like I'm touched by it, and at the same time I've seen people done things in the name of Jesus and God. That's what had me run, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah. So, how so as you were messaging with me, you said it has been like your first year of ministry has been really challenging. What makes it challenging?
So I'm now entering my 5th year of ministry. But my first year, so I graduated from Drew Theological School in 2015 with my first master's degree, moved to Austin, Texas, got my second master's degree. So I have a Master of Arts in Ministry and a Master of Divinity. And while I was working on those master's degrees, I had been in conversation with my bishop at the time, with my district superintendent. Those are my two main bosses. And the entire time I was going to be going into what we call church planting or new church starts, where I would go into a community and create something rather than going into a pre-existing church and leading a traditional church. And so all of my education had been centered around that. All of my training and the practice, they have what's called a supervised practice of ministry, where you go in and like kind of do it before you have to really do it. And then once I graduated from Austin, we got a new bishop was elected, and she came in and just had a completely different vision. So what my plans for 4 years of ministry, or I had been planning for 4 years, they all kind of like fell to the wayside. So as I'm getting ready to start ministry, that was the first like big hurdle. And I was really in a big grief process around
how you saw it.
Having to change and readjust how I saw my ministry showing up.
So wait, I want to see a peek of what got lost. So what were you planning on? And then what
I was
changed?
Planning on hopefully doing some sort of urban church start. So I was imagining Sacramento or San Francisco sort of area, Bay Area, Sacramento area. And the community that I still have visioned is one that focuses on small group ministry. So getting together in groups of like no more than 5 to 10 on a weekly basis and really engaging with how are we showing up as the hands and feet of Jesus, because that's what creates the intimacy and connection within the community to help support each other. Right. And then rather than a weekly Sunday worship service, having what's called a dinner church. So you come together, you make food together, you share food together.
It's like an ongoing retreat every week.
Every week, right. And then you listen, you have like a little mini sermon included in there while you're eating. It's just a much more informal type of worship service. And then the third aspect of my vision is to, be engaged in the community, because as the United Methodist Church, our mission statement is to create disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. There's a lot in there to unpack, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to make disciples to transform the world, the way that I see that is to go out and be involved in social justice and systemic change. Speaking, I lead a white church, which is great because I'm a white woman. It just works better if a person of color leads a colored church, right? And so I'm here to lead my white congregation in how do we be allies of social change in a racial sense for LGBTQ people, right? Because these are the things that are the responsibility of us as white Christians. So really that's my vision for a church ministry. And it just kind of, it got put on pause or got like however you want to say it, like all of that kind of
redirected.
Redirected.
Yes. And where is it redirected to?
Well, I got placed in a very traditional ministry setting. Not only was I not put in an urban setting, which is what I had been expecting, but I was put in a very rural community. I live in Crescent City, which is, technically we're a town of about 7,000. That includes the local maximum security state prison. So half of that population is in prison. So it is a very, very rural, small town. And I've never had experience living in a small town, and it is very different. There's no anonymity here. Everyone knows your business. So I had to like adjust to that transition on top of grieving the loss, what I perceived as the loss of my dream.
Yeah.
And I had never served in a church, a proper church. I had never been a pastor that had to preach on Sunday. I hadn't had to run the administrative side of things. So I had to learn how to do everything in my first year without ever, I had no clue what I was doing. And people were like, does she even know what she's doing? And I was like, no, I don't do that.
So how do you preach? How do you get up there? I mean, it's like I preach all the time, but I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, and you give me a stage and a mic and I'm at it, right? But the thought of getting into a church and standing in front of people and really taking on that role, I don't know why, but it seems so much harder and scarier to me. Is it? And then how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I hated preaching when I first started. And I didn't practice it much because I didn't think that I would have to preach in the formal sense. Because of my church planting idea, my version of preaching was going to be much more laid back and casual. And it is difficult. It's a lot of responsibility to guide people on what our sacred texts are saying. And it can be quite tedious having to do another. There's a joke among pastors where every pastor has one sermon and we just like rephrase it, reword it differently each Sunday, which I guess is true, because a lot of my sermons are Jesus tells us to love God and neighbor. And so here we are trying to learn how to love God and neighbor. But it's a lot of Bible classes. It's 4 years of learning and really trying to wrestle with what we think Jesus is teaching us. But I rely on a lot of scholars who know more than I do to really understand the text. And I don't know, like almost all of my sermons are social justice oriented. If you ever listen to most of my sermons, it can either be
can we listen to them? Are they on YouTube?
They're not on YouTube. They're on Facebook. Some of them are on YouTube, not all of them. But yeah, you can absolutely, if you go to Crescent City United Methodist Church on Facebook, especially since the pandemic, my sermons are all online.
Oh, that's so cool. I can't wait to watch one of them. Yeah. So what's it like? What's it like inside to step in and hold someone else's spirituality?
It's a lot of responsibility. When I first came here, in the first few months, I had a lot of heavy work to hold for other people. I was three different congregants died within the time span of 24 hours. And so grief is a huge part of our spiritual practice and managing and navigating grief. And I was just not prepared. It is a difficult thing. I have a therapist that I see on a weekly basis just because it's so much work that I have to be able to process all of this. Right.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying at times because like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I misguide someone? There's such a responsibility around people's spirituality and their faith life.
Yeah, because there's a difference, right? I mean, in my work, I impact people's spirituality too. But there's a difference because in my work, as I'm coaching someone, I'm listening to them and I'm helping them find their own answer. And then I'm also listening to the 1 degree off where they say they want this, but they're going completely off direction. They really do want to put the responsibility of their life onto me. Like they really want at the end of the day to say, well, you advised me to go this way, therefore I went that way, and it's because of you. And I do my best to say, oh, that's not the game here, sister. The game is you said you want this. And in order to do this, you need to heal this, and I'm here to help you heal this, so that you can get to that, right? With you, it's more than that. It's like it's already built in. You have a whole foundation, a church, a name, a label, and expectation that you, sister, are the one guiding me on where I should be going with my life. That seems an awful lot of responsibility and a little cray-cray, I would say.
Yeah. The nice thing, one of the reasons I picked United Methodism is because we as a denomination with our doctrine have a very generous amount of space for personal experience and agency within the person, and how they understand God. And so in a sense, at least within my denomination, I get to do a little bit more of what you do and let people figure out what works for them. You know, people, for example, people will come, and I had one person ask me, you know, like, what does God believe about abortion?
Yeah.
Right. There's one. And because of my denomination, I can say, like, well, the United Methodist Church in our, it's called our Book of Discipline. It says this about abortion and what we believe. And we recognize that everyone has different experiences, and we rely on personal experience as well as reason, tradition, and scripture to inform us on ways to move forward. So, you know, I can tell you what the big United Methodist Church would say, but it's up to you really to figure out what you believe about God and what God is calling you to in terms of thinking about abortion.
Yeah, but even that doesn't answer that person's question, right? What does God believe about abortion? I don't know. We haven't seen God yet.
Right.
You can only answer, what does this church want me to tell you what they believe, but what does God believe? And that's a very interesting conversation. Yeah.
So I can tell them what the church believes. I can tell them what I personally believe. But there's, at least within our tradition, it's like you have the grace to come to your own decision about what you believe. And I find that really nice.
And how do you manage it all? How do you manage being a mom, a wife, a pastor, etc.? Oh, and then do work, like your biggest passion. All of this is so that you can go and do work with marginalized populations and support them and all that stuff.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive spouse. And you know, the pandemic has made it all so difficult. You know, I've got he just turned 2 yesterday.
Yay, happy birthday!
Yeah. He's great. But I don't, what am I trying to say? I'm fortunate to have a job where I can bring my son with me to Bible study, and people seem to really enjoy it. Like, who doesn't love having a little kid running around?
Kid cells, man.
Right? So I'm really fortunate that I can be a full-time working mom and still bring him with me if need be. And the pandemic certainly made it difficult. We couldn't get childcare, but you know, we made it work. I drink a glass of wine at the end of the night. That helps me manage for sure.
So you're allowed to drink. Okay, good.
I am. Yes.
I was just gonna ask you that too. It's like, do you find, is there any conflict inside you? And then being a pastor, you have to kind of put that conflict aside, right? I mean, like, if you are a normal human being and you're growing through different phases of life, you should be running into inner conflicts all the time, because that's how we grow. We challenge ourselves. We have to figure out side. But being a pastor, it seems like that's a bit more challenging to have that, the inner conflict. And then what do you do with it? Or can you talk about your inner conflict outside of you?
Yeah. You know, some pastors would say, no, you keep that to yourself. Right. You're in a position of leadership. But
that thing is a very deadly statement. You're in a position of leadership.
Right. And like, I get it to a certain point, and I'm certainly not gonna go and air all of my dirty laundry to my congregation. But I think that there's a lot of value, and this is a contradictory statement. I get that. I think that there's a lot of value in pastors being transparent
Human.
and authentic with the struggles that they are having, and so I kind of do that. Like in the first year of my ministry, I ended up getting really sick and ended up finally being diagnosed with 2 autoimmune diseases.
Ooh.
But as I was going through the diagnosis, I was struggling with depression. I was struggling, I was literally dying. My body was shutting down, so I didn't have energy for things. I was really struggling with my faith because, like, why would God put me in this church when and in this position that I don't know? And then all of a sudden I'm struggling with my health in a more real sense than I ever have before. And one of my bosses was like, keep it to yourself. Don't share that with people. You need to still be a person in leadership. And I was like, I can't do that. So I shared with my congregation, like, folks, I am still here to lead you as best as I can. And these are my struggles. Like, I am really wrestling with my faith right now, because that shows them, in my opinion, that it's okay to wrestle with your faith. It's okay to have doubts and be mad at God. I was really mad at God for doing all of those things to me and allowing all of that to happen in such a short, like, I can't handle any more change, God. Like, what are you doing? And it strengthened me and my relationship with a lot of my congregants. It certainly turned a lot of people off, and a few people left because that's not the kind of pastor I want, but oh well.
Yeah. We're not a good match. You
Yeah.
Go.
Go enjoy finding an appropriate pastor for you. Thank you very much.
That's right. And then last but not least, how does being a woman pastor, a female pastor, how does that play? Is it easy? Is it no big deal? Or does it come with some challenges, just like in other parts of society?
Oh, it comes with so many challenges.
No. Why?
I'm sure this will not be a surprise to you, but man, I have so many people who don't think that as a woman, I should be a pastor, right? Just because I'm a woman. Women should not be in the pulpit. So right.
You should be in the back there. What do you know?
Mm-hmm. And this particular community, I think there's now a second female pastor finally. But we are the only denomination. No, there's one other denomination in town that allows for the ordination of women even.
Yeah.
But I am the only one that is actually a female pastor, and the other clergy, not all of them, but a lot of the other clergy in town, like, I'm not pastor. They don't recognize my title. They don't show me that respect. But then even within my congregation, they don't have an issue with the woman part, but the fact that I'm a young woman and I look younger than I am. Like, everyone assumed that I was in my 20s when I first came. Yeah. And so to them, I'm younger than their grandchild. So they don't really see me as pastor. They want to, like, oh, you're just like my grandkid. Let me give you food and money because you're like my grandchild. Okay. Great, thank you. I'm also your pastor.
Yeah.
So it was really, I'm not one to, like, stand on ceremony and formal titles. So at first I was like, don't worry about calling me Pastor Dana. You can just call me Dana, whatever you feel comfortable with. And now I'm like, no, it's Pastor Dana. I have to, like, assert that title to make sure that they recognize it.
Yeah. Oh, baby, you're so brave. Oh my God. I can only imagine. OMG.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can feel it. I feel it in your tone of voice, how grounded you have become, how confident you are now in yourself, and you have lived through some fire, so your skin is getting nice and leathery. It's good on you, and you give birth, and you lost a child. So all this stuff is really helping you come together nicely. So congratulations! I really see a different Dana. Pastor Dana is in the house.
Yeah, thank you.
Any words for other women out there who feel the call to become a pastor but challenge themselves or shut themselves down or whatever that you might share?
Yeah, like it's not for the faint of heart. It really isn't. Like even I knew that it wasn't going to be easy, and I was still disillusioned, right? But that doesn't mean that there hasn't been, like, there's been so much joy in it. And just do it, just go for it. Like, God works in the most mysterious of ways. If I can become a pastor after being through what I've been through, and being as imperfect and flawed as I am, man, there's and I say that in a good way, right? Like, we are, as humans, are all flawed, and I think that there's strength in recognizing our flaws and working through them.
I see it as perfection. I know
Right.
some of your stories, and it's so much bravery, and you really threw yourself into life and into being a human so that you can understand what being human is all about. And now it comes all together into this package so that you can have more capacity to understand other humans that come into your door. I think
Mhm.
it's beautiful. You may call it flaws. I call it etching, or
Yeah, flaws isn't the right term, because that has a negative
no.
connotation, and I don't mean it in that sense.
Yeah. Well, but it is very church-like, they like
Right.
to talk about flaws and sing
I
about
was going
flaws.
to say sin, but that's a very
That's
loaded
even
word
what.
too.
Now
Yeah,
I'm
it's so
running. I
loaded.
got my bag. I'm gonna run.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations, honey. I'm so glad that you found your church, you found your foundation, you found a place for you to express yourself and guide others. You are a powerful leader. Um, and it's so good to see you as a mom, as a wife, and as a pastor. So
Oh, thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Bold, Brave Woman. I'm so excited to be able to bring these deep, heartful conversations to you all out there, no matter where you're at, whatever you're doing. Just know that you are being bold and brave to
Mm.
speak up, to clean up after your kids, to do whatever that you do out there. Just know that I love you. I send you so much love. Just being a woman on this planet, doesn't matter what country you're in, takes so much bravery and boldness to do so.
Yeah.
If you enjoy this conversation and would like to be part of the Bold Brave Women community, please join us on Facebook, Bold Brave Women on Facebook. Let's see what else. Oh, and if you have a story that you would like to tell, please join the group and let me know, and I'll get you on. And so that we need to tell our story, ordinary women's stories, so that we
Mhm.
can inspire each other and come together as a community to support each other and cheer each other on. And if you, speaking of support, and if you love these conversations and would like to help me keep producing them, thank you, Dana, also for being my supporter. That was so awesome. You can buy me a coffee or two at buymeacoffee/Mai Vu Coach. Mai Vu Coach. So that's how I drink the coffee and I create some more. I drink the coffee, drink a coffee, drive, and then create some more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I know you're super busy with all of your roles and everything, and it's so good to reconnect with you and hearing your bold and brave journey.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a
Bye.
wonderful day. See you in the next episode.